I want to know everything there is to know about you.
I'm going to introduce me.
You must have spotted her by now. She's always there.
Don't I deserve love?
Somebody has to like me best.
You and I in our relationships with other people, we didn't use the word love a lot, did we? Kimmy says if you love someone, you say it. You say it right then, out loud. Otherwise, the moment just
Passes you by.
passes you by.
Hello, and welcome to the Don't Know Her podcast. I'm Michael.
And I'm Scott.
And we are here, again, to talk about an underappreciated actor of the silver screen. And as we have been doing for the last few episodes, we've been taking listeners' requests. And today, we have a really special one from my sister, who is a big fan of the podcast and had an amazing person to suggest, who is
Dermot Mulroney.
Yes, and what a person to suggest. I don't know if he was on our list, was he?
Gosh, there's so many names on that list now, but I don't think so, no. I'm pretty sure when you'd mentioned that your sister had put it forward, I was like, yes, please, because there's a lot of films there I'm very happy to go back and rewatch.
Yeah, and I asked Kira, my sister, why she put him forward. Firstly, I should say she is a huge fan of My Best Friend's Wedding. Which,
Quite right.
Yeah, any sane person should be. A terrific movie, which we'll get into. But what she says is he has all the attributes of a leading man: the hair, the face, the body, the voice, and is in one of the best rom-coms ever. But nothing like came of that, or he wasn't catapulted the way Cameron Diaz was, who, you know, they're all so central to that film. Like, I don't think that film would have worked if Dermot Mulroney wasn't so good at that part, you know? And it is a bit wild that people, producers or whatever, didn't try to capitalize on him more. Or even capitalize on him still. Like, why is he not being offered some Marvel gig or something?
Yeah, it's fascinating because he is really charismatic, and it's an interesting place to start thinking about exactly as Kira's describing, that he is a movie star, like tentpole movie star, but never got the roles to reflect it. I mean, even in My Best Friend's Wedding, in theory, he's not the star of it. He is the man in Julia Roberts' life, and he is interesting in that film. You're right. I think he is perfect in it, but it requires, not to say very little of him. It is sort of kind of a droll part, really. But I genuinely think, and people may disagree, but I genuinely also think he does that very well. And even in that, because he has such classic movie star looks, he is still so quietly charismatic and captivating, and you can understand what brought their characters together. So it is a really curious thing, and I hadn't clocked until researching for the episode either that he has, not until doing Scream 6 this year, he has never been in any franchise ever. That is the first sequel franchise of anything that he's been in. And considering the amount of roles going and the amount of work he has done and the amount of times he's cropped up in things, I find that wildly surprising. So he is a unique case given his place in Hollywood and the roles he was in. I realised that's quite loud.
Yeah, there is a helicopter. I hope Dermot is he coming to talk about his career? I don't know. We're recording this as the coronation is happening and the country's gone wild. The coronation of King. I was going to say King Richard. Oh my God, I'm not in a play. King Charles. Yeah. Sounds weird, doesn't it?
Yes.
And really, we should be crowning Dermot Mulroney. King Dermot.
It suits him. That's an interesting thought for the future. And
where would you have first known who Dermot was?
So I would have first known Dermot for sure playing Gavin in Friends. So he's in a 3-episode arc of Friends playing Rachel's, or a love interest of Rachel's. They end up working together.
You brought me a present. Why?
Let me explain how birthday parties usually work. There are presents and a cake, perhaps a 4th or 5th person. Okay, I got you the present to make up for being such a jerk to you.
They have a very memorable kiss on a balcony, which triggers a lot of other characters' feelings, aka Ross. And I would remember him firstly from that, but then I had a phase where I watched The Wedding Date a lot, and I think I probably was a young teenager, probably much older than I'm thinking. I'm like, I was this kid obsessed with this film. I was probably like 18 or something. But I was very captivated by him at a point where probably wasn't really dealing with the fact or knowing of the fact that I was gay then. However, very, very drawn to this man.
Wait. So there are so many questions
so much to unpack here.
I thought I knew you. So the Wedding Date is a film you've seen a lot, which in itself
a lot
is wild.
Loads.
Did you think you were watching it for Deborah Messing?
I would never.
Or specifically that little ascot neckerchief she wears when they're dressing up as 1960s. I don't know what they're dressed up as.
Yeah, I was. I have no idea. I seem to recollect it was just on TV of an evening. I watched it once, and I mean, I've always had a real soft spot for rom-coms, mostly good ones, but also the lesser ones. And
then The Wedding Date.
And then The Wedding Date.
No, it's not that bad.
So I saw that film a lot. So that would have been then the first time of knowing who he was, or really paying attention to him. And even though I will have also seen My Best Friend's Wedding earlier than that, it didn't even click into place. But the Wedding Date struck such a chord with me. And even going, of course you're Gavin from Friends as well. It all made sense. So the Wedding Date was the one that put everything together, but it was definitely Friends for me.
That's there's just so much.
What about you?
I can't wait to get to The Wedding Date again later. Okay, about me. Well, My Best Friend's Wedding, as is probably no surprise if my sister is suggesting Dermot. My Best Friend's Wedding, I don't know why. That was a film we watched as kids. I really liked that film. I, again, don't want to get too much into it now, but I think he's really interesting. I think the film is fascinating in so many ways. I think he's playing a person who clearly has so much love, including a sexual attraction to this friend who is also an ex, while he's also, building his life with this new woman. I think there's lots of interesting moments to that, and I think he's really great in it, and it's always clear what the intentions are and feelings of all of the characters, but he's the most complicated one. It's easier in a way if you're the other people in that scenario, but he is there with two women he absolutely adores in maybe more similar ways than any of them would admit to themselves in this very heteronormative world that way. And I think it's really special. And we'll get into that more, but I think that's true. So, sorry, I don't remember him in Friends. To be honest, my memory of Friends and Rachel, I remember Joshua because I thought he was hot. And do you remember she, thinks she's alluring him and, strips into her night dress? Lingerie! Oh, my God, I sound like I'm describing, Rose in Golden Girls.
My God.
I'm telling you, she's wearing, the sexiest outfit. And then his parents come back home and she has to pretend that's her outfit for the evening. But otherwise, I don't remember Friends that much. For Rachel. And I couldn't tell you. Plenty of movies I will have seen and liked him in, like About Schmidt, The Family Stone, which is a movie that really has triggers me in good and bad ways.
Okay.
The Family Stone is just, but his part is very significant for how I feel about that movie, and I did not have any relationship with The Wedding Date until last night, where I made the mistake of turning it off.
Oh, gosh,
Only
darn.
joking,
No,
kind
no,
of.
sure. No, I think that's probably fair. You agree with all of the critics when that film came out.
Including Deborah Messing, I assume.
Yeah, her herself. She was the most critical when they saw what they did to her makeup.
Oh my God, Polly Pocket makeup at its finest. No, my favourite bit of The Wedding Date, a spoiler, we will talk more about it properly, but is when they arrive in London and she needs to get changed, and the shot they have of the pub where she's changing has like a New York, pedestrian sign, and I was like, you couldn't even just put a UK sign there? Like, what is wrong with this movie?
Oh,
Sorry, I'm not going to shit on it forever.
No.
I have nice things to say.
it's okay. Well,
Holland Taylor's in it.
sure.
That's it.
Oh, okay. Well, we will get to The Wedding Date again, and we can really, really dive into why I think that's actually a 5-star film.
Oscars all around. Robbed.
Well, you're telling me. I think you're joking, but I'll pitch my case. Anyway, let's then dive into Dermot and find our way through his career.
He's also, we haven't said, have we said? He's very attractive.
Well, yeah. When we say classic movie star, I think we're implying that...
Yeah, but you could be classic, handsome, but not be attractive. I'm trying to think of an example of that, but I think he is a good example of someone who is absolutely classically good looking, but also very sexy. Do you know, there's certain people... The people come to mind, I probably think for people who disagree with me, but I wouldn't find Brad Pitt that sexy. He's to me a very classically good-looking man, but I'm not going to throw myself at him.
Okay, strange.
So Brad, you can sleep easy tonight.
Yeah, well, true.
Also, I mean, there's a few reasons why Brad Pitt wouldn't be a good choice, but. But you know what I mean? So good.
Yeah.
Austin Butler. There's an example. Timothy Chalamet. They're too prettier, too
I know, so I know what you're saying, and a word I'll use a lot here, but it doesn't apply. I think aesthetically in some films he is incredibly dashing, and there's just something so classic, and the hair, and it just is everything's so nice.
You're just talking about The Wedding Date again.
Well, I am.
Which he is.
It's what I'm thinking of. But there is something about how do I describe his quality? A brewiness sometimes, which maybe adds to this sort of. Maybe that's what gives him the kind of sexier appeal.
He's at ease at the world because he lives in a world where he should be one of the most privileged people, and the way he operates around it, and in most of these films, including something like About Schmidt, where he is the butt of a joke often because he's wearing wigs and big moustache, and Jack Nicholson thinks his daughter Hope Davis deserves much better. He's still walking around owning his space.
It's so true.
And I think that is really sexy. And I think that is something that is really appealing. He is a strong pair of hands that would look after you.
Well, then that is what I've written so much times in my notes whilst watching him in the rom-com films. Is it's that he represents stability. Yeah. You just feel like you're going to have a very comfortable and happy life with
and also great sex. There's a lot of hinting at those that
Yes, he again. I point you towards The Wedding Date.
To be honest, most of my understanding of the world is through The Wedding Date.
Oh, Jesus. I think truly...
I'm learning so much. This has been 10 minutes or something, 12 minutes, and I've learned so much about you.
Okay, fabulous. Right, well, anyway, here we go. Diving in as we also wish. So, we could call him the spooky boy because Dermot was born on Halloween, 1963, in Alexandria, Virginia. So no wonder he's made Scream 6.
Oh my God, so he is 60-something years of age?
That will make him 60 this year as we record.
gosh.
So in Halloween this year, he'll be 60.
Of course, that would make sense. I just hadn't clocked.
Yeah. See? Doing well.
Aging like wine. Like a good wine, even. Like
Well,
Kylie wine.
Yeah,
Kylie
aging
Minogue
like-
wine.
Yeah, aging like Kylie wine. Okay, so his father was a law professor and his mother a regional theatre actress. So talking about being a very, very busy woman on stage all the time and the significance of regional theatres in that part of America was a very, very big thing. Dermot himself is one of 5 siblings, one of which is Kieran Mulroney, who also is an actor and screenwriter. During his schooling in Virginia, Dermot took up playing the cello at a young age and played in school and city youth orchestras. He also attended the Interlochen Arts Camp as a cellist during his sophomore year at high school, and then as a teenager played in the US National Symphony Orchestra. So very, very, very accomplished cello player, as it would seem. And you can go online to watch videos and see this in action. It's not just something that he did passively as a kid. He continues to do it today. So
And he's on Coco and stuff.
he's on many,
So
many
many.
film scores. So because he strikes up this friendship with Michael Giacchino whilst filming The Family Stone, which he scored, he ended up proving himself to him, sort of doing like a kind of mini audition, at which point Giacchino was like, fair enough, you can play on the scores if you want. And it's something that he has so much pride that he has done today, and will gladly list all the things he's done. He's on the score, playing cello in Mission Impossible 3, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, Star Trek Into Darkness, The Incredibles, Inside Out, Rogue One, to name just a few. Basically, most films that Michael Giacchino scores, Dermot will now rock up with his cello and get stuck in. During his younger years, when he was said cello whiz, he also did have time to participate in community theatre productions. So the seed that would go on to become his career was also planted, even if it meant the cello ended up taking somewhat of a backseat. From the age of 18, he would go on to study communications at Northwestern University in Illinois, graduating in 1985. In his final year, he auditioned for a talent agency and was asked to relocate to Hollywood. Now, based on everything we've said about him and just those classic looks, I'm not surprised. They probably took one look at him and went, move there now,
Yeah.
we've got this covered. Let's take it all the way. And then once he got to Hollywood, he spent a few months auditioning before landing his first role, which would be one of the leads in a TV movie called Sin of Innocence in 1986. This role involved him playing a stepbrother who gets romantically involved with his stepsister.
Oh my God.
Sophie. The next few years then see quite a flurry of other TV movies and an episode of Fame. 1988, though, brings Dermot's breakthrough on the big screen in Sunset, but more noticeably, Young Guns. Now, Young Guns is a sort of Brat Pack loaded film. So if you're not familiar with that era of stars, you've got like Emilio Estevez, Charlie Sheen, in specifically the case of this film. And then many others, those who starred in John Hughes films and kind of this 80s teen era, all sort of form this group called the Brat Pack. And this film features a lot of those familiar faces. Emilio Estevez is the lead here, playing Billy the Kid, and he is leading this group of young, teenaged, I guess they're called sort of gun runners, who in the sort of Wild West setting end up having to avenge the murder of their, they keep calling them benefactor. I'm not quite sure what the word benefactor actually means, but they keep naming him as their benefactor. So when he gets murdered, they go out to avenge his death. And Emilio Estevez's character, Billy the Kid, takes that authority and his charge over this group a little too far, and things get out of hand, landing them all in a lot of trouble and on the run from many angry other gunslinging men of the Wild West.
Chavez!
What?
You think your little son's a butthead?
He's going into the shitter. What? Billy, go in there and cut the son of a bitch in half.
Dermot in this plays a character called Dirty Steve Stevens, and now in this I was quite taken aback after my image in my head of Dermot in The Wedding Date and such. He is
dirty.
He is really grubby and almost to the point of making me feel a little bit ill. Sometimes his cheek being really full of like chewing tobacco or something, this swollen mouth and talking with a very dominant accent, but literally being covered in like muck. And whereas the rest of them, although a little rough around the edges in makeup, none so much as him. However, on listening to him on fellow Brat Packer Rob Lowe's podcast, Rob, whose wife was the makeup artist on this film, said that the one that they all did fancy, forget all of these others, it was actually Dermot. They would just then filthy him up and send him out to play this scrappy little hick sort. So a very rough around the edges version, which we see kind of iterations of again, but not, I would say, to this extent. I imagine Young Guns is a real nostalgic favourite for people who were brought up on it, watching it as a teenager. I'd imagine if they rewatched it now, they'd probably still get some kicks out of it. In 1989, we have Dermot then starring in Lee Grant's Staying Together, and, importantly, one we're going to stop on, as a character called John in Norman Renee's Longtime Companion, which would be the first wide-release theatrical film to deal with the subject of AIDS. This film chronicles the first year of the pandemic as seen through the eyes of a group of friends who are mostly, in the case of the film, gay men, all sort of going through it together as it's happening, and it's sort of chaptered by time. So a date will pop up on the screen. In some cases, it'll be a few months later, a few years later, and it's broken up into about, say, 10 segments, chronicling from the very beginning when you're first hearing about this outbreak of what is described as gay cancer, right through to the point where there seems to be some light at the end of a very, very dark tunnel in time for everyone who went through this. And Dermot's character of John is the first in the group to die. So this, given what this film meant and being the first of its kind, this would also mark Dermot as playing the first character seen to die of the disease in a widely released film. So one that had a mainstream release. So a very, very significant film, very, very significant role for him, even if it's short-lived within the movie itself. This was my first time watching Longtime Companion. Was this your first time?
Yes, it was my first time. I feel like I watch, well, which anyone who listens to the podcast, and you definitely will know of, watch queer stories, particularly like of all types, but also queer stories that are more connected to the community. So this felt, as opposed to say something like Philadelphia, Jonathan Deme's film, this felt much more realistic in reflecting the community. Not that I was around at the time, as I was only born in 87, but it's a real touching portrait of a group of people through a really horrific thing that was happening, both in terms of what was happening in terms of AIDS and how it was spreading, but also about misinformation, about attitudes in society. And I think the film does a really wonderful job of focusing on the human elements of that story. I thought it was, I'm really struck by the film. I liked it a lot. And Dermot Mulroney, like at the beginning, like that is exactly how anyone would react to that sort of information. Like they're all, having a great time, living their lives, feeling liberated from what you get a hint of, childhoods and years before not being able to be themselves and live the life that they want to. Well, not even want to, they need to. That is who they are.
You even want to find out his name?
I want one thing and one thing only. For your face to shrivel up and fall off in the sea.
So when he passes, it is shocking. Like, it is a shocking thing. And even knowing everything that we do now, it is shocking watching that film. You do not expect Dermot Mulroney. You don't expect any of them because they're so happy and young. And then, he does punctuate it, he does return in some form, and that's so beautiful. I mean, that's the poster image in a way. And it's just like all of this, I don't know, there's something about the community and I felt very proud. I mean, that's a word that we use a lot now in the community and overused and used to reflect a whole month that we can be celebrated by even Rishi Sunak, even if he wants to get a tokenistic picture with a drag queen or whatever the fuck he wants to do. But actually, this film reflects the true sense of what pride that would have been for a community that was really fucked over.
Yeah. And
you're right, it does focus primarily on gay men and touches upon other characters and other stories, but I thought it was great. So yeah, I'm really glad to have watched it. Really beautiful movie. And not like, I feel like oftentimes when we have AIDS stories, they are almost like biblical in terms of, a morality tale, if you're talking about the normal heart. Or Angels in America, Tony Kushner's TV movie and the play, and this felt just like a drama, like an American standard drama that was really just heartfelt and mostly well told. So yeah, I really am glad to watch it.
Good, yeah. I thought it was pretty special too, and for all the reasons you're saying, and you get that sense of the community and what their lives were like, and their visits to, I guess it must be Providencetown or Fire Island.
Or both, maybe.
Or both. Maybe they're taking it all in. And yes, the way it is broken into these chapters does give you a sense of what painfully would have just been almost an inevitability in certain cases of it just happening again and again and again. And the sort of chapter of this film kind of marks that happening on a variety of occasions. Although it never feels too... what's the word I'm looking for? It never feels too like it's relishing the fact it's telling a bleak story. It just feels like it's telling you the story of a group of friends affected by this terrible, terrible thing and what it was like for them. But there is still love and joy shared amongst these characters as they're going through the worst of it.
It's pretty wild that they really managed to stay away from it being overly sentimental, being sort of like torture porn, like this epic story. Like it is a really well judged drama.
Yeah, for sure. The only thing that I would outwardly fault is it's lacking diversity. In a film of this kind of nature celebrating community, there definitely would have been room for characters who weren't white to also take centre stage.
Or even reflect on why that group of people didn't include that.
Yes, exactly. There certainly could be more done to look at that and look outside of, if it was just that these were a group of friends, looking outside of that a little bit more, perhaps. But it was the first to tell this story. I think it does it very well. And I think Dermot it's really fun to see him here because he has this kind of tactile, playful energy. He feels gay without leaning on stereotypes, although, it might be a conventional, outlook at what a gay man in this scene crowd might be like. But to me, it plays pretty authentically. So for a very early role in his career and a very important role in his career, I think he's doing a good job and doing something different than certainly we see otherwise.
And I assume a lot of people would have turned their noses up to that. Like, I feel like I bring up this example a lot, but Adrian Brody not doing Angels in America because he didn't want to be seen to be doing a gay role, and that's in the late 90s.
Yeah.
So, firstly, fuck Adrian Brody, but secondly, and anyone who, that's homophobia.
Mm-hmm.
But good on Dermot.
There we go. Go on, Dermot. All right, let's move into the 90s, where we continue to see Dermot work steadily in film, including 1990's Bright Star. We have a 91 John Hughes written comedy Career Opportunities, and then a film called Samantha. In 1992, we have Dermot take on a leading role as King, who is the leader of a group of teenage runaways on the streets of LA, in a film called Where the Day Takes You, which was directed by Mark Rocco. So this one very much feels like a film of its time, feels like one of those 90s grittier representations of teen life that we were seeing with the likes of Larry Clark. In this case, for Dermot, he is getting a leading role, which is, I guess, as we look throughout his career, fairly unusual. This would have been the first kind of big leading role for him, playing the leader of this group. He sort of brings this, again, quiet charisma, but there is a roughness to him, so you kind of get a sense of authenticity. But I believe the genesis of this idea came from the writer spending time in a kind of homeless youth shelter in LA and then being inspired to write this, and then the cast all had to sort of do the same and spend time with kids who are on the streets and learn to understand, and they all took very kind of low pay to be involved in this film. So you can kind of get that sense of that a spirit and energy behind it of wanting to be there and wanting to do it. You get a sense of, again, community in this film, which is what it's about. It's about a community of people who have found themselves leaving home and on the streets. There are moments in it where I think that it's interesting and wanting to tell an interesting story. So maybe its ambition is good, its heart's in the right place, but ultimately I think the delivery is weak and we end up sort of treading into terrain which I imagine is the product of someone who doesn't actually truly understand what life on the streets for these people is like, and it's sort of hitting these really what feels like conventional beats, like, oh, of course that's happened to them now. Oh, of course this has to happen to this person. Yes, yes.
It says here you haven't been with a family for...
My friends are my family. Of course, you can't trust them for shit, but, once you know that, it's cool.
I guess I'm glad I've seen it for the purpose of watching Dermot and seeing him, again, very, very young at this time, holding a film, leading a film, understanding why he would be this character that these characters are drawn to. And again, this feels like an origin film for who should go on to become a massive movie star. It feels like it's set up in that way. The way he's shot, the way it all revolves around him very much feels like that this is a movie star. Watch out for him. But I guess something just didn't come off quite right. I don't know. It was received fairly well when it came out. I don't think it holds up terribly well, considering all of the very kind of similar films that came around it at that time. Over the next few years from there, we see Dermot start to take on some more high-profile roles, like in Sam Shepard's Silent Tongue. We have Point of No Return, a couple of episodes of the Emmy-nominated Family Pictures, starring Angelica Houston and Sam Neill. Peter Bogdanovich's The Thing Called Love, which is about a group of young newcomers to the country music industry. In that, we even see him, I believe, write and sing his own song. An interesting one. I did watch this film years and years ago, but I'd be lying if I said I remembered too much of it. So maybe it didn't have the lasting impression that other Peter Bogdanovich films tend to. We've also got Bad Girls. We've got Disney's Angels in the Outfield, which is a film in which he played Joseph Gordon-Levitt's dad, which even now, it feels like he's way too young to do that, but I guess not really. The Last Days of Paradise, which I think was a big one for him. Tom DeSillo's tribute to indie filmmaking, Living in Oblivion, which
oh yeah,
no, go on.
Is that where he met Kathleen Keener?
Interesting. No, they actually met on the set of 1986's Survival Quest. They would star in another film together. They got married in 1990, but in this film, Living in Oblivion, they are certainly on screen a lot more than they had been together previously. He would star again with her very quickly after that in 1996's Box of Moonlight and Heroine of Hell.
Yeah. And are they must be the first couple we've done both of on the podcast.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
They
Do go back and
definitely
listen to the Kathleen Keener episode.
Yes, please do. Within the spread of years, we also have him in the Sigourney Weaver, Holly Hunter starring thriller classic Copycat. If you haven't seen Copycat, I do recommend it. He was also one half of the MTV Movie Award nominated Best Kiss with Winona Ryder and How to Make an American Quilt. Returning to the loving arms of Angelica Houston in her directorial feature Bastard Out of Carolina. We have him in Robert Altman's Kansas City and David Coep's The Trigger Effect. But this is now where we get to the most luminous movie star turn of all time. But sadly not for Dermot. I'm talking about Julia Roberts. But like we've said earlier, he's still pretty dashing. It is, of course, My Best Friend's Wedding.
Well, they're all... I mean, I agree with you. Julia Roberts in this film is being given the perfect part for her star personality, particularly of that time in her career. And if only all the movie stars in the world could be given parts as wonderfully tailored to how they operate on screen. Like, we would be so lucky if we had people operating that way. Like, J Hogan clearly understood, who directed it, no, I should say directed Muriel's Wedding before this, understood Julia Roberts' star power and clearly understood what the rest of his cast could do. So we have Rupert Everett in a terrific role, George, as Julia Roberts' friend, who is very active in the story. Cameron Diaz as the woman that Dermot Mulroney wants to marry. Very suddenly, they have just met Kimmy, this young woman, very perky, blonde, and he rings up Julia Roberts' character to tell her he's engaged to Kimmy. She's expecting... Actually, he's going to propose to her because they had done some drunken agreement that by the time they were 30, which is very upsetting as a 35-year-old, by the time they were 30, they were going to give up on love and marry each other.
Crazy kids.
And he doesn't want to do that. He wants to have her be part of his wedding ceremony. So enter Julia on full form, determined to derail this wedding and win this man back that she didn't even really want to begin with.
It is the duty of the best man to dance with the maid of honor.
Dance? You can't dance. When did you learn how to dance?
I've got moves you've never seen.
You're an imposter. What did you do with my best friend? Huh?
I'm still your best friend.
And it is amazing. Like, I do think this is one of the, like, there's that, My Best Friend's Wedding, Moonstruck, like, they're the two films that jump out to me in terms of best rom-coms ever made. Okay. And they are two incredibly made movies in that they understand, you know, you need romance, you need all these things, but there's, like, a reality base to it connected to this fantasy world. So you have, like, Rachel Griffiths and I forget the other actress who, like, they're playing these siblings who are all singing, all dancing, all, like, unnecessarily there to just, like, have a great time and to really pump up the energy. Cameron Diaz waltzing, like, or not even waltzing, jumping towards Rupert Everett as he arrives because he's pretending to be Julia Roberts' fiancé, because of this farcical thing. And he's like, well, fuck you if you're going to do this and put me in a closet. I'm going to be the campest thing out there, and I'm going to be the worst sort of fiancé you can imagine. It's just all wonderful. Even the sing song, Say a Little Prayer for You, all of it is wonderful, but then it can also bring it all the way back to a moment like Julia Roberts trying to communicate to Dermot Mulroney what she wants, and about, like, you know, when they're on the boat and they're going under the bridge, and she's like, do you remember that time? You're reflecting, and then she talks about like a moment passing, and then the moment does pass, and it's gone, and you realise she does have a limit to a point. He doesn't want Julia Roberts in a committed relationship anyway. And it's just, like, spectacular. I think that's just a wonderful achievement of any film. But for it to also be so entertaining at the same time is incredible. So I could watch that film weekly and enjoy it still.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is the key. So I'm in agreement that this is a top-tier romantic comedy. 5-star, could go back anytime. It is so wildly entertaining. Julia Roberts in, for me, honestly, the not necessarily like the greatest movie star performance of all time, but just like you described it very well, a moment in time and someone just elevating her to her best, and her just being luminous and really funny, clumsy. I mean, she is a pretty terrible person in this film, but to great effect, and it brings everything along, and her character makes sense of Dermot's character in that at times you wonder, besides the fact he is very, very attractive, is there much other cause to why they're both so into him? And I think yes and no for both of them, though. I think they have very different personalities, the characters of Julia and Cameron in this. And I can really understand why they both want him, and it makes sense and it doesn't make sense. And I think that's part of the charm, because that is the nature of it all, and the value of friendships and how life can shift and change, and the people who are valuable to you will shift and change too, even if at moments in time you desperately don't want that to happen. It does happen. And I think it captures all of these things so well. And then that fantasy element to it that you describe is just a wonderful concoction of just everything working like bottled magic. I really, really adore this film and think it's terrific, and I'd be surprised if anyone doesn't adore it too.
Yeah, and I think J Hogan clearly has a knack of having a cast of characters who are really unlikable, like Muriel's Wedding, but finding all of the nuances to them and the personality, and draws them out so that the audience root for them all. Because it's not as if, like, Cameron Diaz is just a purely nice woman either. Like, she's demented in her own way, and is, you know, there's various bits like keeping Julia Roberts in an elevator where she's clearly having a panic attack. You know, there's various moments where Cameron Diaz is clearly not a good person either. But I love it. I could talk about this film forever. I also think in terms of when I reflect on when I watched it when I was young, and Rupert Everett, and feeling like represented in a way was really wonderful, and that he is the hero of the story.
Yeah.
He's wonderful and funny, and I remember when I was young somebody saying I was like him, which I assume was a euphemism. But I took that as like, that's great.
Great.
Yeah, I think I am.
Good.
I think I am funny. I think I am very, attractive enough. I think people will be lucky to be my friend.
Oh, that is so
so
lovely.
I think that's wonderful, and it does have my favorite ending, maybe of any rom-com ever.
It is a great ending. Yeah, I think that's what makes it special. And thankfully they went with it. The original ending was going to be different, and she was going to...
Aiden from Sex and the City was going to be there.
She was going to turn around and clock eyes with someone else. But then they realised the value of Rupert's character, and of course that he was going to be the one to kind of save it all. Wonderful. It's interesting to think about the what could have beens in this. I mean, talking about, again, how just dashing Dermot is, that, I mean, the first time we clap eyes on him, you know they're even building towards it. They have such faith in the fact he is so, again, sort of luminous, gorgeous movie star. It cuts to him sort of emerging from a crowd in the airport, and you are like, ah, and you can hear sort of like, you know, the angels singing from above or something. But initially, and I don't know whether this is true or not, but it was initially offered to Edward Burns, and I'm like, I just do not understand that at all in the context of this character, him, and how he's framed in the film.
That is wild.
But even stranger to me is that apparently J Hogan wanted it to be Russell Crowe, but during a table read realised that
it wouldn't work.
It was not going to work.
Well, there's something about Dermot in this film. He has this dazed look quite often, and it plays to different shades of it, in that, like, when he meets Julia Roberts, as you say, at the airport, he has this like excitable daze. When he's thinking that she's engaged to someone else, he has this sad sort of dazed look. Even when, you know, ultimately he knows very well what Julia Roberts wants, he has this sort of like almost angry but like focused on Cameron Diaz's character look. I don't know. Yeah, I think he's terrific, and I'm so glad Ed Burns, Russell Crowe. For some reason, Sean Penn you were going to mention. Any of these people, stay the fuck away from Dermot's part.
Yeah, back off. All right, on to 1998. We see him in Roland Joff's pretty wild-sounding film called Goodbye Lover with Patricia Arquette and Ellen DeGeneres in quite an unusual cast in what seems to be a very frantic film. So maybe I will go back and check out, even if the reviews don't suggest I should. Skipping a wee bit on, 2000 brings along the Paul Newman starring Where the Money Is. And then back-to-back, Alan Rudolph directed Trixie, which stars Emily Watson as a self-appointed PI. So whilst I'm kind of going through this, I'm realising that there's lots of films I really have to catch up on for a variety of reasons. And then the other one being Investigating Sex. We also have him again with his still wife of the time, Catherine Keener, in Nicole Holofcener's Lovely and Amazing, and that comes along in 2001. We also get The Safety of Objects alongside Glenn Close, Patricia Clarkson, who we have very much enjoyed doing an episode on as well. And there's other people in that cast that maybe one day we'll get to, like Mary Kay Place. She has a Mary Kay Place on the pod at some point. In 2002, we have him in a very different form to what we have come to know him best for. Less dashing, bit more schlubby. And this is, of course, for Alexander Payne's About Schmidt in 2002.
The fellow's name is Randall Herzl. He's got a sales job of some sort. Maybe Jeannie is a little past her prime, but I still think she could have done a heck of a lot better.
How you guys doing?
I mean, this guy's just not up to snuff, if you ask me. I mean, not for my little girl.
This film tells the story of Jack Nicholson, is this character called Warren Schmidt, who is retiring from his job as like a risk assessment officer, manager, whatever it might be, and then sort of pondering retirement with his wife, played by June Squibb. We hear about how much he loves his daughter and that she's very valuable in his life, but even there's a sense of he's kind of just a bit disillusioned with life at this point. And then in a sad turn of events before his daughter's wedding, she's played by Hope Davis, I should say, and Dermot Mulroney playing the husband-to-be. June Squibb, his wife, very sadly dies whilst vacuuming, and then he has to fend for himself, and that's something he's very much not used to in his life, so decides to make tracks for his daughter and
Wait.
No,
This
hold
is
on.
really important information. He's clearing out June Squibb's
Oh my God,
things
yeah.
and realises June Squibb has been cheating on him with a family friend. And then he takes it upon himself to go in the minivan that June Squibb...
Minivan?
It's not that sounds like Little Miss Sunshine. This is a fucking massive, expensive
RV,
thing.
yeah, huge.
And he decides he's going to go on a little journey on his way to see his daughter Hope Davies and her partner Dylan.
And then
Dermot. Dylan.
You
Not
done
Dylan
it?
McDermott.
Oh no.
Dermot Mulroney.
And very importantly, Dermot's mother played fantastically by Kathy Bates in one of her Oscar-nominated turns.
Terrific.
Jack Nicholson was also not Oscar-nominated for this.
And probably would have won if Adrian Brody, that Weinstein campaign didn't really take off, because I think the film is... I think my reaction to the film is not the intention of what Alexander Payne maybe was after. I thought Jack Nicholson's character was kind of like the villain that wouldn't let everyone else enjoy their life. So like June Squibb found a little bit of joy from an affair.
Yeah.
Hope Davis does not want her father. Right? He's not a nice man.
No, he's not. No.
But I think the film maybe thinks you'll sympathise with him more than you do, and I don't.
Agree. Yeah.
And I think that's also to do with the world back of what it was, 20 years ago, in the world today of we judge men with their privilege much harder than we would then. And I think that he would have got away with having I think maybe the same could be said with a lot of his films. Like, I haven't rewatched Sideways, say, or even Election. And maybe that's why he doesn't hold a place in, contemporary film the way other people that were making films then were.
Yeah.
But About Schmidt, it was interesting to rewatch. And I think Dermot Mulroney is wonderful. As I was saying, I think the joy is he doesn't give a fuck about anything else. He's just trying to live the best life. He offers his sympathy to Jack Nicholson, even though Jack Nicholson has no interest in him being anywhere near him.
How you doing? You doing okay? Fine. Sure? Yeah.
But he's very good. But I think the whole film is stolen by when Kathy Bates arrives, but also Jack Nicholson, who's writing letters to this orphan child he's been donating money to, so he thinks he can give all of his cares to this poor child. But yeah, it was grand, but it was fun to see Dermot Mulroney do something different.
Yeah, for sure. I think for the purpose of this, that is a massive highlight. About Schmidt, very weirdly for me, as we've all come to realise in this episode in general, is a nostalgic favourite. I remember going into HMV, seeing the cover, and for whatever reason being compelled to buy it, watching it loads, quoting Kathy Bates lines to anyone who would listen, being like, as if I was quoting Star Wars or something. I was like reeling off her quips and put downs of everyone. So I very much enjoyed it. I agree with you around the framing. I reckon it is sort of you're meant to kind of feel for him more, but he is also written in a way where he's awful, and he spends his time writing to this child who is staying in an orphanage, and he's sending money as part of this appeal, and he writes these very angry, scathing letters about his family and his life, and moaning and venting. And even in his moments where you think maybe he's turned and he's giving his speech at the wedding and he has respect for all these people, that too is fleeting, and you understand that he's very glad to get away from them. So it's sort of this, I think you can understand that it is a grumpy man, and that's never really going to change, and he doesn't really want to be part of all of that.
Yeah, but he wants something from them. That's where I think my thing of the film doesn't explore. Do you know who I was thinking I would love in some weird mashup that they could meet? Judi Dench's character in Notes on a Scandal and Jack Nicholson's character from About Schmidt. Two elderly bitches just meeting up and seeing who can bitch each other. Who can be the nastier?
I mean, that is a very, very strange crossover prospect. But I'm intrigued.
But it's what we need.
Yeah, why not? Give it a go.
Judy and Jack. Judy and Jack. There we have it.
Ta-da! But yeah, I was glad to rewatch it because it does hold a fondness for me, whether that's completely valid or not. And in that way, it is is certainly amongst my favourites of Alexander Payne's, if not my favourite, really. But I too haven't rewatched some of the others.
And I love June Squibb. I think June Squibb
she's
is
so
wonderful.
Great. Yeah, and with so little to do here, she brings so much in her silences and the way she's kind of rustling around and all the things that frustrates him about her.
And I think this is where it came, was more like, she's had to deal with some shit, and now he's not in the office every day. Mm-hmm. Like, the poor woman.
Yeah, she's like, oh God, here we go. But still trying to see the positive. All right, so let's crack on. In 2003, we have here the 3-episode arc of Friends as Gavin. In 2004, Dermot lends his voice to a TV movie called Hair High and stars in David Gordon Green's Undertow. Then we have 2005. My. This is where we're really lucking out. So we have, Must Love Dogs. I don't know, I've not seen that film, but it seems like also something that I truly must. But very significantly for us, for very different reasons, and in one case, definitely not for you, The Family Stone and The Wedding Date. So shall we start with The Family Stone, Christmas classic, watch it every year. What are your thoughts?
It's a Christmas classic. Family Stone. Okay, Family Stone, I will do anything to see a Diane Keating film. That includes even that one with the palms. I'd watch them all.
Yeah.
I remember myself and my mum being really excited by the concept of The Family Stone. I was a big Sex and the City fan. So Sarah Jessica Parker as well. This is a big post Sex and the City film for her. The casting was exciting, Diane Keating, Christmas film. And we went to a cinema that isn't that close to us because for whatever reason it wasn't showing at the cinemas near us. And I remember having a nice time, enjoying it. And then, it's a film about Sarah Jessica Parker's Meredith being brought home by her partner, Dermot Mulroney, to his family, who are very liberal. They're so liberal. Like, Sarah Jessica Parker's character is so buttoned up and so... she's not explicitly conservative. She's less exposed to the world than these characters. Sure. Diane Keating has, thrust... human rights information, whatever, to these people's lives for their whole life. So it's really enjoyable, this fish out of water comedy. I personally find Sarah Jessica Parker likable, so I like her in this sequence. But what really turns everything is that Dermot Mulroney wants to have the family stone, this diamond ring, to propose to Sarah Jessica Parker. And they all are pretty shit to Sarah Jessica Parker, to the whole movie. And then there's a moment at a dinner table, which I just find really complicated, and I think the film is a bit too easy with it in terms of Diane Keating is jokingly saying she wanted all of her sons to be gay, and Sarah Jessica Parker, without thinking, says,
"You didn't really hope for gay children, did you?"
That's a very loaded conversation, but the reaction to that is everyone tells Sarah Jessica Parker to shut the fuck up, including her potential fiancé.
No, I'm sorry. I did not mean that. Honestly,
Why don't you try saying what it is you do mean?
And Diane Keating, it's all just treated like such a heightened thing, and I think the film misjudged something which I think could have been a real turning point for other reasons. I do not agree with what Sarah Jessica Parker's character is saying. That is, kind of casual homophobia, and is really upsetting. If I was at a table and someone said that, I'd be devastated. But at the same time, the film just seems to be like, okay, we're just going to use this as collateral damage. You're like, oh no, but this moment is really upsetting to hear in a movie.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a kind of a long-winded way to say I do like the film. I do rewatch it, but that moment always jars with me of to a point where I dread that scene coming up.
Yeah. It is an uncomfortable scene.
And it doesn't have a purpose. I don't mind discomfort because Sarah Jessica Parker clearly has not considered herself homophobic, does not mean it in a bad way, but the way they act is really just not something that makes sense to me. But then I find it complicated because I would be so upset, and I would love in real life if someone stood up for me in that way. So it's a very complicated. I just think the film just needs Sarah Jessica Parker to go out, flirt with Luke Wilson, have her sister who's arrived, Claire Danes, flirt with Dermot Mulroney, needs Diane Keating to have a big moment. Like, they just need all these things to happen and just put it on the wrong beat of the film. But yeah, I like it. And I think Dermot Mulroney is fine. This is a part where I think could have been someone. Like, he's very good in it. I'm glad he's in it. But he's not the reason I'd be drawn back to that movie. You couldn't replace Rachel McAdams, Sarah Jessica Parker, Diane Keating. But yeah. So overall, I do like it. And it's a film, rightly or wrongly, I think about often. Not in the same way you do with The Wedding Day. But I just contemplate because I think that's I find my reaction to that moment so interesting. And if anyone wants to talk about that with me separately, totally, just because I don't know.
No, but it is interesting, and I've not actually thought about that before. But what she's communicating is complicated, whatever the feelings are that come up with that. So maybe just the sort of quick jumping down the throats, really vilifying her in that. It is. You feel the pain and discomfort. But that's sort of the point, because I guess the sympathy does turn back around and she is then welcomed into the family in a different way. But yes, I hear you. It's not a comfortable scene in an otherwise fairly fun, pleasant, seasonal watch. I've watched it many times, very fond memories of watching it. But speaking of film that I have a lot of thoughts about, The Wedding Date. So for those of you who haven't seen The Wedding Date, and surely that can't be many, it is a romantic
dramedy.
That was comedy, but is it really? Not really. It is sort of just like a romantic dramedy. You're probably right there. So directed by Clare Kilner, it tells the story of a woman played by Deborah Messing, who
a nightmare
is a nightmare. No.
Speaking of this is Sex and the City-esque, like what they're kind of aiming at.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Tonally, striving towards it, and the music cues feel like that too. A lot of it, yeah. So
walking down the steps, there's so many angles for no reason of like people in shoes walking or like I'm like, what's going on here?
Midriffs getting into cars. Yeah.
Anyway, but that to me is of the time.
Oh, wonderful.
Did you get distracted by midriffs?
Yeah, just the all the amazing shots. I mean, it is beautifully
Roger
constructed.
Deakins did it.
Yeah, it was. Could have been. Didn't actually check that. Anyway, woman invited to her sister's wedding, played by none other than
Amy Adams. In a proper villainous role.
Yeah, she's an awful character in this. The problem with Deborah going to this wedding is that she knows that her ex is going to be there, of course. The wedding's in London. Her ex is from there. He's going to be at that wedding because he is going to be best man. So the way to deal with this, apparently, is to pay $5,000 to hire a male escort to accompany her to the wedding. Who is that male escort? Well, none other than Dermot. They encounter each other on the plane over, go there, and then he does a fabulous job of delivering in all angles. He is the handsome man. Everyone's very envious that she's turned up with him. He charms everyone. He again feels so stable and there for her. And then for her specifically, in the moments where they're alone in the room and he's dropping towel, getting into the shower, there's lots of other ways that it can be pleasing for her too. And the opportunity to upgrade should she wish to spend some more cash.
So, are you ever attracted to your clients?
I know you're curious about my business, but I really can't discuss other clients.
Oh, come on. How many of them want to sleep with you?
I swear. It's not about sex. It's about having a little understanding of what people need.
Please. You're like the Yoda of escorts.
Okay, well, let's get into it then. So, firstly, the dynamics of sexuality and sex work in this film I found so confusing because he's kind of aggressively throwing his body at her when she said she didn't want it, and I didn't know whether that like, is that okay? Like, I'm like, what is happening here? And then there's a sequence where she comes back with a whole load of cash wanting sex, and then he's annoyed. And I'm like, I don't understand. But that, you know, there's probably no point in talking about that. But I thought he was perfect as a male escort.
Yeah. A high-end male escort.
Oh, really high-end, yeah.
Very classy situation.
Do you know what? I was hoping the movie was going to get more into, like, other women at the party and men recognized him from employing him in the past. Like, I would have loved a movie like that.
Oh, that would have been interesting. No, this film's very conventional. I say I have a lot of thoughts about it. I don't truly. I mean, on reflection, it's not the film I thought it was when I first watched it. But, you know, it created stirrings. I watched it a lot. And I was therefore glad to go back and rewatch it. But yeah, bits of it. I still find it fun. I don't know, it's very swift, and the film's barely 80 minutes, I think. So it's over in a flash.
And it moves along at a pace.
Yeah, it certainly does.
Gives Deborah Messing, now, let's be honest, like, the worst clothes at the beginning, but then towards the end, you're like, really pulled it out of the bag. Like, honestly, whoever... that was a decision for her character, terrific. Until the wedding, the actual bridesmaid's dress was not nice on her, but then what is supposed to be. But she was gorgeous in this black dress.
No, that's very true, actually. So you're right. It does really evolve with her. Would I recommend this film? 100%.
Yeah, I don't think I would not recommend it. I just think go in with low expectations.
Yes, it has clunky, sort of forced writing. That's certainly something I noticed this time. The music is very fun and adds to a sort of specific energy of its time, but when you listen
like
to what
Bublé.
yes, Michael Bublé, so much of it. But there is the chorus near the beginning.
But that's not the chorus. That's a cover. I was trying to who the fuck is singing that song? That is not Andrea Corr. Leave me breathless.
Oh God, I totally thought when it kicked off it was, so I didn't pick up on that. Maybe it was Michael Bublé as well, because he is all over this film. But the songs, when Michael Bublé is playing, what song he is singing is so on the nose, it's a little embarrassing.
Why don't you go find her at the church? It made well.
Yeah, exactly, pretty much. So it's not worth recommending without, caveating with, it's a clumsy, typical movie of its type, but Dermot might do things.
Yeah, he's very handsome. It's also the sort of romantic comedy where people say things like, I'd rather fight with you every day than fall in love with someone else. You're like, do you know what? I feel like that's not the dynamic people should be championing in movies. But, you know, Dermot's hot.
That's true. And also, we'd be remiss for the purpose of the pod not to mention that in her very fleeting moments again, well, no, she has a few more than in other films, but Sarah Parrish is a delight.
Terrific.
Yeah,
I love
she's
her.
so much fun, and just wish we had more of her in British comedy in general.
I have a real serious question. So I'm not going to have any spoilers, but if Dermot and Deborah got together at the end of this film, she clearly wants him to be monogamous and committed. How would he earn any money?
Very good question. I don't know. Hopefully he'd had another trade before he went into escorting. I don't know.
Yeah, bodybuilding or something maybe. He does have enough body.
But she obviously is absolutely minted, so she's just going to pay for the both of them.
She's some flight.
I don't
manager,
understand. Considering how much
HR
she's spending
person.
on prostitutes, it doesn't quite make sense.
Prostitute is not the word we use. Sex worker, and he actually does not. He's not paid for sex in this film.
This is very true, but it is on the table.
Literally on the table. Literally on the boat, if you want specifics. In her father's boat, like out in the road, and she brings him down there. Like, have sex
sense.
like Dermot would have been fine anywhere.
Oh.
You don't need to bring him to an awkward boat.
Well,
that's balancing on some wheels outside it looked like a slanted road. I was like, is this going to be a comedy thing where they start shagging and the boat starts falling down? I think I should have wrote for this film because I have so many thoughts that could have really elevated it.
Oh,
like imagine if she like crashed into something.
That would have been great. Well, maybe a remake is needed.
And Deborah Messing can still play it.
Yeah, of course, both of them. Both of them, so fine. Anyway, okay, we'll move away from The Wedding Date, even though it breaks my heart. 2006 brings along another romantic lead role in a film called Griffin and Phoenix. 2007, we get some wildly differing offerings here, but they are equally impactful. So, on one hand, David Fincher's Zodiac, where he plays Captain Marty Lee, and then on the other hand, just as impressive, we have Gary Marshall's Georgia Rule, which sees him playing opposite Jane Fonda, Felicity Huffman, and Lindsay Lohan. But no joke, I do have a soft spot for that film too. I watched it at a certain time. I thought very fondly on it, but again, one that critics didn't agree with me on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, you seem to be on a high with him for Wedding Planner.
Yeah, I mean, he's in so many of my favourites, so Dermot's my guy. Have you seen Georgia Rule?
I have not, but I love Zodiac.
Perfect.
So I'll say that's how I'll end
yes,
it.
it's not worth completely skipping over Zodiac, but yeah, Zodiac's a great film. Check out too. He also voiced the Green Lantern in 3 episodes of DC's animated The Batman series. In 2008, we see him in a fleeting moment. So he's one of the stars of Coming Up Daisy, which is the film within Burn After Reading, and he's opposite Claire Danes, so reuniting after the Family Stone.
This is in Burn After Reading.
Yeah, like a little film within that you see, yeah, and it's called Coming Up Daisies. Coming Up Daisy, yeah. Sounds naughty.
Everything's coming up, Rose. Sorry.
That's okay. You're always welcome to bring Gypsy. The next few years will bring along Dermot in. I'm just going to list a few to crack through. J. Edgar, The Grey, Big Miracle, Struck by Lightning, Stoker, and there's another thrilling entry. Jobs, and a few episodes of Enlightened. And this is where he'd start also his 8-episode arc in New Girl, where he plays, quite fittingly, Zooey Deschanel's fancy man. And I think basically they saw him in all the same things I did and were like, fancy man, perfect. Now we're at 2013, and this is where we see Dermot as part of the Super Bowl of acting. That is August Osage County. Here he plays Steve, which is the sleazy fiancé of Juliette Lewis's character. So now, we have talked about this film before when we spoke about the fabulous Margot Martindale. I'm just going to add that I think he is perfectly cast here, and he does this sort of sleazy, show-offy, sports car riding creep incredibly well.
Yeah, and a really good subversion of what you come to expect of him. Yeah, I think he's terrific, and he's a standout in a room full of standouts.
Yeah. But again, this is maybe a lot of things where I'm the anomaly in liking films that critics don't. I'm a big fan of that film anyway. But I agree, he is a standout in a film full of standouts.
Now, I don't know that much about poetry, but I thought his poems were extraordinary. And your reading was very fine.
Thank you.
Where's Bill? Who are you?
Well, this is my fiancé, Steve. You met him at the church?
Steve Herbebrecht.
Had what?
Herbebrecht.
Heidelberg. It's German.
German-Irish, really.
Picking out some of the more familiar entries from the kind of next run of years where things do get a little patchier, to be fair. I'll name some headline ones. So Insidious Chapter 3. In 2015, we get him commencing his 23-episode run on America's version of Shameless. Opposite Cate Blanchett in Truth, we have the very, very critically panned Dirty Grandpa, which I have no intention on ever watching.
Didn't we watch that for Catherine Keener?
Oh, maybe I put... No, that's Bad Grandpa. This is the one with
Grandpa?
Robert De Niro and Zac Efron.
Sorry.
Which I think is...
Don't know my grandpa movies.
Apparently heinous. It's very easy to confuse. 3 episodes of Mozart in the Jungle, where he finally gets to play a real cellist.
Oh my God, I must continue that. That was Bernadette Peters, Gail Garcia Bernal.
Yeah.
That was fun, but I didn't keep going. I forgot about that show.
There's a reason for you to go back. 3 episodes of American Horror Story Cult, which I think was the 7th series of the show. 3 episodes of Homecoming, 5 episodes of Station 19.
Homecoming with Julia Roberts. Homecoming is a really underseen but really terrific TV show, FY. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't.
I
but
highly recommend. And then Janelle Monáe takes over in the second one.
any time that those two reteam is a winning combo for me, so ought to. Arrested Development, he was in 7 episodes there, playing a character called Dusty, for fans of that show.
Was he dusty, like he was dirty?
He didn't. Well, unless it's going back to his young gun days, then
Dusty.
No, he would never be. 6 episodes of 4 Weddings and a Funeral, 10 episodes of The Purge, 2 episodes of Messiah, 3 episodes of Prodigal Son, 13 episodes of Hannah. So very, very busy boy on TV over this time, and maybe that explains the sort of patchier film work that was maybe going on here. So this is now us taking all the way sort of up to date. We got 2022 and maybe a few more miss-worthy entries here. A film called Agent Game, Section 8, and The Inhabitant. I've not heard of any of those either. Thankfully, another massive hit was on the cards, and this was, like we said, the only time he has ever starred in a franchise film, and this is Scream 6, where we get Dermot as Detective Bailey, so he is one of the cops on the case, inevitably because it's a Scream film trying to track down the ghost-faced murderer who is killing everyone. It is enjoyable. I feel, for me, this is where they were trying to freshen up, and a lot of people do think it hits that mark. I
prefer The Wedding Date.
I preferred The Wedding Date.
Well, I probably would prefer The Wedding Date.
I find it a little uninspired, but there are some choices that's fun. Dermot certainly gets to have a lot of fun with this part. I think he lucked out with this one, and given the fandom of this series, hopefully it's given him a very significant place in the Scream fandom, canon, all of that good stuff. So yay for getting in there and doing a franchise. I hope it doesn't mean that he just does that willy-nilly, but I don't think so. I think this is a
wait,
fun
you did say he was in Insidious 3. Is that?
Oh my gosh, of course. So I
maybe he likes horror
lied about
franchises.
that. So maybe he just loves those. Yeah, maybe when I've heard him talking about it, and that's why I was like, wow, he just doesn't consider Insidious to be a franchise, but maybe he means very, very successful ones. And then if we look what's coming up in the future, there are a lot of films on the list. He's in Anne Heche's actual final credited film called You're Killing Me.
Oh my God, don't make that face.
I didn't make a face.
Oh my God. Well,
it's just reading it now as I was thinking about it.
It's
uncomfortable.
That's an awful... Although I love Anne Heche.
Yeah, I know. It's very, very sad. But alongside that, there's 17 other listed credits on IMDb, and looking through all of them, I can't say that any seem very inspiring.
Is he in The Irishman? I feel like everyone... Not The Irishman. What's the new Scorsese film everyone's
Killers
waiting
of
for?
the Flower Moon.
Is he in that?
No. But maybe one of those will turn out to be amazing. I just didn't clock it, or something else great will come up. If something else great was to come up, what would you like it to be, Michael?
Well, I could not resist bringing back 3 actors who we do not have enough on our screens lately. That would be Dermot, Julia Roberts, and Cameron Diaz.
Perfect.
And if we're talking about movie star vehicles, and I'm sure I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but one of my all-time favourite movie star vehicles is way back in the past called Sudden Fear. Joan Crawford, perfect movie for her when she was getting older and her star was diminishing, the producers would have said. And she plays a playwright, which is the part I'd get Julia Roberts to play in this remake, who will not cast an actor. She decides he's not, we need to recast him before the play opens. That would be played by Dermot Mulroney. The play's a success. On her way back to her home in the countryside on the train, who does she bump into but this man again? And they strike up a nice conversation. Everything seems lovely. But enter, at their engagement party, a woman that he seems to have an interaction with. That would be Cameron Diaz. And the main character, now Julia Roberts, is conflicted whether she trusts her soon-to-be husband or she thinks that he's up to something with this woman that's just come on the scene. What will happen? It's a thriller, kind of campy, but not campy in like a First Wives Club sort of way. It's proper like great movie making, or it was. I'd have someone like Todd Haynes direct it, or even David Fincher, but I think he's a bit too serious and not so much fun. But somebody who understands joy and entertainment, but also understands like a real sort of thriller nature, because without spoiling it, there is a connection between this new woman, and the man that she marries, and it makes her feel very unsafe. And I think those three actors would be perfect in those parts. So in the original one, it was Jack Palance, Dorothy Malone, and Joan Crawford.
Right.
So I think Julia, Cameron, and Dermot would be perfect.
Oh my God. Well, I'd love that. And it's a film I actually must watch anyway, the OG. So I will add that to the list for sure and hope for your wish to come true. And from a very similar starting point, I mean, I'm going to go far more basic this. I would like him to reteam with Julia Roberts in particular.
Boo, I thought you were going to say Deborah Messing. Well, that would have been sweet.
I mean, sure, that would be sweet. It's not going to be my choice on this occasion, though.
When we do the Deborah Messing episode.
But I tell you for why. It's not just because they're lovely together on film. If you watch the clips, I don't know who it is who does it, where they read out the answers or they answer the top asked questions on Google. And it was done a few years ago, maybe when they were on the TV show together. But they have such a lovely chemistry. I assume they're very good friends in real life. It certainly feels like they have that rapport because they do know a lot about each other. So I just think they are great together, and maybe I do want the rom-com that their characters didn't get in My Best Friend's Wedding. And, you know, I just want someone great to make a great rom-com again. I don't know if Rob Reiner ever fancies coming back to directing, but he hasn't directed in a long time. Was that a bad suggestion?
He's dead.
No, he's not.
Rob Reiner?
He's not dead.
Who's Rob Reiner?
The director of When Harry Met Sally.
I think he's dead. Did he not do Ghostbusters and all?
No, that's Ivan Reitman.
Well, I'm sorry, Rob. If you're a listener to the podcast, congratulations, you've just been hired for your new job.
This is your face. I thought you were going to like saying something else about him, like I didn't know. I'm like, oh God, don't add Rob Reiner to
Oh my
about
God,
this.
I don't know.
Well, he is alive, and if for any reason he fancies directing again, he's made some of the all-time greats, including When Harry Met Sally. And I just want a classic. And even though it wasn't the best film in the world, Ticket to Paradise with Julia Roberts and George Clooney was a very lovely way to pass some time. So more of that, please, without any shame.
Surely Nancy Meyers is designing some huge beige kitchen for Julia Roberts to do a rom-com.
I'd imagine so.
Like
She was actually the first person that came to my head, but I feel like she is now significantly the most mentioned in this segment of the pod. So I thought I'd pull out someone who you apparently thought was dead.
Who did I think was him? Ivan Reitman.
Ivan Reitman.
Well, do you know what? They probably look the same, do they? I have no idea. Sorry, Ivan. Sorry, Rob.
Oopsie.
I was going to say something else there that's totally gone on my head. But anyway, I love that. I would love to see them both be in more rom-coms. And more films. Honestly, I understand Julia Roberts is a big star and doesn't need to do anything and doesn't want to, maybe. And, you know, comes do Ticket to Paradise or Homecoming or whatever she fancies. But it's a real joy. I will go and watch anything she does.
Yeah, she is the movie star of our generation.
I think she is.
Yeah.
Her and Glenn Close.
Just the same.
And Michelle Pfeiffer. Okay, well, I'm getting old. I'm older than you, so I cover more ground.
Different energies.
Me and you, or
well,
Michelle Pfeiffer?
That too, apparently, judging from your answers.
Different energy. Yeah, you'd have Deborah
Pfeiffer, I agree with.
So, what a delight. Where can people tell us how much they agree with you about the wedding date?
Please come and share your enthusiasm for one of the greatest films of all time. You can do that on Twitter and Instagram at don'tknowher_pod. Or if you want to send a really lengthy email detailing all of the things that Michael didn't realise about that film that I didn't have the time to explain, get us at don'tknowherpod@gmail.com.
Thank you, yes. And please do rate, review us. That really helps other people find us. And do share with any person, one person we ask you to share with that you think would enjoy us drooling over, celebrating, poking fun at Dermot and the rest of the great list of actors we've been talking about. And this brings an end to our little mini-series on listener requests. I'm sure we'll bring this back because
it sounds like back to us now.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the people and the mix of people that we talked about. So thank you so much for everyone that suggested. In this case, my sister Kira, and we'll be back soon with another grouping of brilliant, underrated, and very special actors.
We sure will. Thank you, Kira. Thank you, everyone, for listening. For now, goodbye.
Bye.